What's going on, guys? Back again with another video. This video is going to be a character analysis of Hilmes, or Lord Silvermask. He is a character in Arslan Senki. The material that I'm going to be basing this analysis off of is the anime and not the manga or any of the books. So if you have not seen the Arslan Senki at all, or if you have no prior knowledge, there will be spoilers in here. So if that's something you're not looking to hear, probably stop the video and go watch the anime and then come back. Arslan Senki is a coming of age story where you follow the young Prince Arslan on his journey to become king. He goes through a variety of trials and tribulations that force him to mature. So you see this young man go from a naive young boy into a very mature and inspirational young man. Even, he's still a teenager, but generally speaking, he influences the people around him. He both influences and inspires the people around him and everyone he meets. So he one of the biggest themes that shines through in Arslan Senki is destiny. This theme is most evident for all the players fighting for the title to become king, which would be Arslan, his cousin Hilmes, the subject of this video, and his father Andragoras. So destiny is a preordained path for an individual that is fixed and immutable. It can't be changed in many ways. And for Hilmes, his character in a lot of ways is grounded in this theme, in that he is doing whatever it takes to forge a destiny that he feels he's entitled to based on the upbringing he had as a child. But fate would have things go differently for him. And when Hilmes was a young man or a child, he was the Prince of Pars and destined to be king. And this is how he was brought up, and this is the kind of training that he would receive. And in many ways, his childhood was like Arslan's, as you've seen in the show. And but that all changed when Andragoras, just like a thief in the night, and stole everything and burned his face and essentially just traumatized his whole future, his life, and just took everything from him. And he's had to live with that like to this day. And those events would shape Hilmes into the character that we see currently in the anime. For the bulk of the story, whenever Hilmes is introduced or when we see him, he is generally spending most of his time trying to make amends for the damages that were done to him as a child. So essentially, he takes back Pars, does whatever he takes to thwart Arslan, captures Andragoras, the man who killed his father and that was single-handedly responsible for destroying his life, and holds him hostage. And he does all this effectively and efficiently. And this drive has made him cunning, strong, and fearless. Because this has been the center of his whole life, and he's thought of nothing else but doing this. And you see how much he hates how his life turns out, especially when his mask falls off. You can see that just the amount of anger, especially when it came off when he was looking in the mirror. You can see the anger, the insecurity, and just how he breaks down. Or whenever he sees fire, it just anything that reminds him of the day that everything that he was entitled to was stripped from him, where his destiny was totally shifted, and he sees where he is today, and he doesn't want to accept that. He's essentially the enemy of destiny in this anime, and essentially he wants to take Arslan's place. He feels Arslan is where he should have been, and he's going to make sure it's his, and he's going to make the Andragoras bloodline pay. It's not enough just to take back his throne. He has to make Andragoras' bloodline feel the pain that him, his father, and his whole family went through when Andragoras took the actions that he took on the day that stripped Hilmes of everything. When Hilmes was first introduced into the story, I really he just came off as like just the standard villain, in a way. He was just deemed irredeemable, pure evil. Like, because especially considering that powers are built up to be the good guys that had a very clean record. Um, he was calm, cool, collected, composed, uh, and just his mask, just his whole steez. It just seemed, very, just standard villainy is, and including his voice, honestly. So I really wasn't expecting much from him. And then also when he killed Arslan's master, the guy who trained Arslan the sword, and I believe was Andragoras' second hand man. Uh, when he killed him, it just seemed like, wow, like you are a bad guy. Just you got to be destroyed. That was kind of the vibe that I was getting. And also, he was a single force that was upending Arslan's life, who up to this point, we was probably the main character that we had kind of been connected to throughout the show. So that definitely didn't help his image much for me. But despite coming off as irredeemable and evil, he was still very interesting and intriguing. His character design looked pretty cool, with the mask, hairstyle, just the outfit. He looked pretty cool. Just his strategic prowess, just the way he just maneuvered around the Parsian army. Obviously, up to this point, the Pars has been built up to be this ultimate army, and he just annihilated them just through tactics alone, and not necessarily through sheer force, like linking up with the Lusitanians. Although at that time, we thought he was a Lusitanian, but once again, linking up with them, full, like, just using the fog to disorient the the Parsian army, and tricking Andragoras into running, and then using that to confuse his own army that, hey, look, nobody's retreating, and that Andragoras left them for the slaughter, and just stealing the guy who drum beats, I guess, who would let them know that, hey, this is a retreat. They couldn't know, and they just slaughtered them. And when you see them turn on Andragoras, I was like, wow, this is a very impressive strategy. And he came off as a bit more intriguing, even though he did come off as a standard villain, but he seemed to have a bit of potential, I'll say. As the story went on, and we uncover more of Hilmes' backstory, he becomes more of a sympathetic character. And in a lot of ways, I would honestly feel more sympathy for him than Arslan throughout the show, just understanding the pain and that he went through his background to get to where he was at that point. Also, what made him even more redeemable was, even though despite all the negatives, the outbursts, just the insanity that would drip through him whenever he ran into anyone of the Andragoras bloodline or lineage or faction, he was very kind to the people that was around him, that he cared about. Like, like it would. His positive, I guess he's kind of like your quintessential bad boy. For all the bad, you could definitely see the good in him. So that was definitely that made him a more intriguing character. But despite all, the underlying positives about him, another thing that just shone greatly as the story went on was his insanity. Like, just how belligerent he would get at the very idea of the Andragoras bloodline. Like, he would just lose all sense of himself and his future goals and plans. Like he would lose it and just become sadistic. So it's, but in the end, all of that makes him probably one of the more intriguing characters that I've seen in anime. I'm not gonna say like all time, but definitely a notable, memorable character. Hence why I am doing a video on him. There were generally 3 specific events that shifted Hilmes away from my original expectations of him. And these events were generally how he treated those around him. The first of which being was, or let me not say the first, the biggest of which was his relationship with the Princess of Mariam. And just seeing that softer side of him, seeing them hang out in the past, and like just during that time when he was running away from Andragoras and he was in hiding, and he seemed very content with that life, and he seemed very happy, and he did what he could to kind of, watch over her, and he didn't seem as psychotic, and he treated her very well. And then and then moving on into the future, after all that got upended once again, just a guy with a ton of bad luck. When push came to shove, when it became his own interest versus saving her life, when the Lusitanians were gonna execute her, he chose her. So that definitely added more layers to his character, and I was definitely very impressed with that. The second incident that helped push just a new image of him on me was when he killed his master by accident. I believe he was fighting Arslan, and I think this was outside of some fiefdom, and he just they're fighting and they're having their little monologue as they get to know each other, and then I believe this guy was knew who Hilmes was, and then once he saw it, he jumped in, and Hilmes killed him, and I thought, oh, he was gonna laugh, but you can tell there was sadness because apparently they had a history together, and this was a man that taught him the sword, and that was he was basically like his trainer, I believe this was his father's right hand man, when his father was a king, but yeah, so he really showed sadness. Like he really did not feel comfortable with that kill. You could see the hurt on his face, and he even asked the man, "Why would you do that?" And you can kind of see the love between the two. So yeah, that definitely softened his character in my eyes. Because up to that point, I don't believe he really showed that much compassion towards the people he had killed. I could be wrong, but from what I recall, yeah, like it was just kind of murder, whatever, which was kind of the vibe in Arslan. But this was the first time you can kind of see it's like you can just really see the hurt. And then the third event is when he shows gratitude to Carlin after he died, and Carlin was the guy or Carlin was the guy who betrayed Paris to help Hilmes reclaim the throne, because he recognized that, hey, look, this is the rightful heir. And when he died, you can see that Hilmes showed gratitude and kind of in many ways said, look, I'm gonna get to that throne, and I appreciate what you did for me. So it was kind of a different look at the man. It's like where you can kind of see he softens a bit and just isn't all about himself. I mean, he is in many ways, but it shows that he cares about the people around him, and you notice this over time, that he does show respect for anybody who acknowledges his existence, and he doesn't just kind of treat them as castaways. So now I'm going to be delving more into Hilmes' past to see the things that made him the man he is today, or at least with the man that we see in the manga. So, as I stated before, despite coming off as an irredeemable character, once you get to know his backstory, it makes him more sympathetic, and in many ways, or righteous, you have a more righteous cause because you start to understand him more. So basically, like he was a kid, in the same vein that Arslan was, as a prince of Pars, getting special training, special treatment, living the luxury life, not understanding the pain and the suffering that's going on in the world, and just kind of being groomed to be the future king. And his father was seemed to be a very kind man, and cared about him a lot. Who you can see that they did have a special relationship. I don't like the anime didn't delve into his relationship with his mother, but based off who the father is, I'm gonna assume that the mother was also solid, assuming that she was alive. Although maybe it might have been Tahimine, but it's kind of confusing. They don't really touch on that because he never really talks to Princess Queen Tahimine. So it's like, do they have a relationship? I don't know. I never really see them in the same room together. But that's neither here nor there. He seems to have a wonderful relationship with the man who trains him. I don't know the guy's name, but it's like he was training him in the sword. So I mean, overall, generally, he looked like a pretty happy kid, right? But as we all know, all of this is torn asunder when Andragoras, his father's, I believe, little brother, little brother, comes and just basically kills the father, murders him, burns their palace down, and then burns him, scarring him for life, and just leaving him totally and completely traumatized. So just imagine that, like, hey, like everything's all hunky dory, and then all of a sudden your uncle comes out and he's trying to kill you. That's insane, right? Like that's not, and then like just you find your father dead. It's like, holy shit, what's going on? And you just see flames all around you. So yeah, man, like it was just a bad event altogether. In many ways, these events just totally shaped him in the same way that him tearing down the new Parsian kingdom as under Gorgeous rule shaped Arslan. And I say that in that it gave him a drive that probably wasn't there before. Right now, it's like he wants to get revenge, so he hones his sword skills and becomes a great warrior. He's less trusting, so he becomes an even better tactician. By going through this, he gets a taste of suffering that gives him a better understanding of the world versus how more naive he was before, akin to Arslan. Now, time would go on, and he would go into hiding. I don't remember what kingdom it was, but basically he was staying in this place, isolated, doing his training, and he would get to know the Princess of Mariam during this time, that the blind girl that he obviously fell in love with, but this time period would kind of soften his resolve. Honestly, like you can kind of pick up the vibe that he was very content with where he was in life, that he'd almost, I mean, from my point of view, it seemed like he'd almost moved on from the things that happened in Pars, and he probably would have been very happy just making a life with her where they were at. And this section of the story is very Samurai X ish, and honestly, it was probably one of the better parts of the whole show to me. So, because it just showed you once again the different sides of Hilmes, and you just see a more kinder and gentler man. But sadly, fate wouldn't allow him to maintain this level of peace, as Andragoras is clearly understanding that this man has a rightful claim to the throne, and other people would recognize that. So he sent soldiers or whoever hunting for him, and they found him there, and I guess the kingdom over there betrayed him. I'm not exactly sure. I believe that they betrayed him and gave away his location. And not only was this a threat to him, it was a threat to the woman he loved, and it lit a fire under him. It truly strengthened his resolve. Like it gave him, like, kind of like how with Arslan, when he was met with the question of what he should do with the throne, when finding out the true identity of Hilmes, and he thought to himself, well, do I really deserve it? Am I even my father's son? When Arslan found out, is he even his father's son? And then was strength, but like his resolve was strengthened, and that he understood, hey, look, even though I may not have a rightful claim to the throne, if I don't take the throne, all the positive things that I want to do can't be done. And so this was like, so Arslan is a bit more positive in when he finds his resolve and it comes to the completion of his hero's journey, right? So it becomes a more of a more positive force in nature, right? Like he's hit his level of enlightenment versus Hilmes, who, when obviously, these horrendous events happen, his resolve is, I'm going to take back the throne and steal back everything that was taken from me and make sure that no one can hunt me down like this again, which is, logical and understandable, because, hey, look, you can't live in peace as long as you exist, and these guys know it. And so there's no way he can live in peace. And hey, this person that you loved, also, they try to take that person from you. So it's like, what are you going to do? But it's a more negative in that his resolve became much more destructive as opposed to Arslan's. So essentially, all these events culminated into the person that we have in the present day anime, where he is singularly focused on his goal to become king. His resolve is as strong as it could ever be, and just willing to do whatever it takes to achieve that goal. And yeah, this is all rooted in that trauma that he had growing up, in that trauma of not being able to escape the reaches of Andragoras. And so essentially he was a dog back into a corner, and that dog decided to bug back and bite. Exactly. So when looking at his background, we can really see his, driving motivations. And essentially, it's, I guess, on the surface level, it would be revenge. So I'm going to extrapolate on this myself. So when you look at it straightforward, you say, okay, it's just revenge, right? Or let me not say, like, to be king, revenge and to be king. But in a way, I feel like that's a surface level of it. But what underlies that motivation is to change destiny, to change the situation that he's been relegated to, essentially. Because if it was just revenge, it's like he could easily have just killed Andragoras. And if he was just to be king, you kill Andragoras and then you take the throne. But he didn't. He put Andragoras in chains, and it just wasn't enough to just kill him. It's like he has to hold him hostage, and he's not even torturing him yet. And the same thing with Arslan. Multiple times he could have just killed Arslan. And then maybe, you might say, okay, well, he wants to give him an especially punishing death that'll be befitting, which clearly it is, because you can see he just goes ballistic whenever he sees Arslan, and it's just not like, he's got to like savor that moment, and like that keen, that calm character that we see, that tactician, it just falls right out the door whenever Arslan hits the room, or Andragoras. But I'd have to say that the biggest thing is that, and he says this to Arslan, he's like, it's not enough to kill you. I'm going to, maybe I'm remembering it incorrectly, but I believe he said something along the lines, I'm going to show you how I felt, basically. Like, you're going to feel the darkness. Essentially, he wants to trade places. It's not enough just to take the throne. It's not enough just to destroy them or kill them. Like, he wants to make them understand what destiny put on him, and he wants to take their position, right? Like, basically, he wants to rewrite history. And the way destiny has relegated him to the darkness while they shine in the light, and he wants to switch that. And so I believe that's his main motivation, is to, just change destiny. Honestly, I think he's not that. A lot of, obviously he's angry at them, but I believe a lot of his anger is just like, hey, this isn't how life was supposed to be. Like, he's mad at the world, not just them, like the world as a whole, and they're the proxy for that anger. Like, because it's like, why hold so much anger towards Arslan, right? It's like, what did Arslan do? Arslan's a very nice guy, but why hold that anger? And so, like, I mean, obviously Arslan's connected to Andragoras, and but when he sees Arslan, he sees the life that he should have had, and so it's not enough just to take it. He has to show Arslan what he went through. He has to put Arslan in that darkness. So like it just runs a bit deep. So that's kind of that yeah. So yeah, that's what I would say his main motivation is just to it's to change destiny. It's not only change destiny, like to rewrite history, change destiny, and yeah, and I think the revenge and becoming the king is just a surface level. Well, especially becoming king. Like I don't think to become king of Paris is his main goal. I mean, obviously it's his main goal, but it's everything that comes with that. Like that's just a means to an end. Like if becoming court jester would be a way to exact revenge on them and switch everything up, I believe that's what he would do. But so yeah. Now, while these motivations and this vengeance and this thirst to rewrite history or change everything that happened, like just make things back to how he sees it normal, just his path towards retribution, while it may be justified, when you look at it objectively, it clearly comes off as very unhealthy at times, like just when he just loses it. When he sees Arslan, he loses his mind. Like, so it's just like like every decent, like all that shred of goodness you see in him, it's like it just flies out the window. And they do it really perfectly in the show too, because they start bringing those like little wizards around him during these times too, those dark mages, and he just looks like psychotic. And it's not healthy, and it almost looks like it's going to consume and destroy him, like he just can't keep holding on to this. At some point he's just got to let it go, like especially now that he saved the Princess of Mariam and she's with her. It's like if he's going to protect her, man, he can't let that these things cloud his judgment. And so I think that's going to be, if assuming that they keep going with the anime, I believe in the future that like he's gonna have to come at a crossroads with his thirst for revenge and the Princess of Mariam, because it's easy to behave like this when you're by yourself. You don't have, obviously he has no family, no kids, no nothing. Everything was taken from you, but now it's like, hey, look, you have a present. Like before, yeah, your past was garbage, right? Like it was terrible. Your present, well, your present is still kind of garbage because, hey, look, you got these scars, which is a constant reminder of the trauma that you went through, and you lost your family and you really have nobody. But now you're slowly building up a crew of loyal people, that are following you, that are putting their lives on your shoulders. And on top of that, now you have the Princess Mariam, who, hey, like you can't just throw yourself into your vengeance anymore, right? Like you have to think about her if you truly love her. So that's going to be interesting to see, and whenever he has to make that decision. So by the end of the anime, I believe it ends, where Arslan, Andragoras, and Hilmes are all on a head-on collision to meet each other for some big battle. So now, what I would say is, by the end of the show, Hilmes, he's kind of where Anakin is in Revenge of the Sith. Basically, what I mean is, it's like he can either be content with his situation and settle down with the woman he loves, because right now the Princess of Mariam is with him, right? They're together. Or he can keep pursuing revenge and risk being destroyed by it, which essentially is what happened to Anakin. Or not necessarily that Anakin pursued revenge, but he pursuing the dark side, or whatever. So that's where Hilmes is. I mean, there is also a Trump. Maybe like I think possibly in the future that if uh, that Arslan maybe could pull Hilmes out of his dark place, because Arslan seems to be a shining beacon light, and he has a strong effect on a lot of characters. So I mean, it'd be interesting to see him and Hilmes one on one, mano a mano, with no interruptions, where they can truly have a long, drawn out conversation. But yeah, so I mean that's where he currently is. The best way to summarize Hilmi's character is to say that he is the embodiment of karma. The chickens coming home to roost. He's the force that demands Arslan faces reality of the world that other people have to live around him. A world that he was blocked off from, that he was allowed to be naive to. And all while doing this, he destroys everything that Andragoras had stolen and been so proud about, separating him from his wife, tearing down his kingdom, turning his soldiers against him, like, and exposing Andragoras' true character to all his subjects, shining a light in the darkness that no one had seen. And you can kind of tell that a lot of characters are shifting away from Andragoras and losing respect, especially how he maintains his behavior to even to tear down his own son when his son had kind of been uplifted in the way and was earning the respect of those around him. And then Andragoras finally, he breaks away from Hilmes, and he comes back and he just takes everything from his son and then banishes his son, basically essentially doing what he did to his brother, except in a less lethal fashion. But despite being successful in his endeavors, despite Hilmes being successful in his endeavors to seek revenge, in a way, this vendetta has been a detriment to himself. Rather than settle down and finding his own personal happiness with what little he has, especially after he caught Andragoras, he could have easily just caught Andragoras, killed Andragoras, and let it be, in a way, and kind of lived his life. But rather than do that, he's clearly seeing constant reminders of what caused him to go through what he went through, and it just keeps rehashing this vicious cycle of hatred that just it keeps him in a loop, enabling him to truly break free in a meaningful way. So in a way, he's still locked into the same destiny that he's trying to escape. He's still a prisoner of that moment when Andragoras came in, killed his father, and burnt his home and burnt his face and attempted to kill him. Essentially, to this day, he's still trapped in that moment. And until he realizes that he may never break out. Hilmes is also the opposite of Arslan in almost every way possible. He's strong everywhere Arslan is weak, and he's weak everywhere Arslan is strong. Both characters had similar upbringings, and both characters had their world torn asunder. But where they differed after being exposed to reality and having their naive worlds destroyed and the walls around their kingdom torn down that allowed them to stay in La La Land. Arslan had guidance. He had Daryun. He had Narcissus. He had just so many people able to guide him in a more positive direction. Whereas Hilmes had to go it alone. He had nobody. He was just left with pain, suffering. There was no support, no guidance, no nothing. I mean, you could say maybe the mages, but I don't know who those mages are. But they're clearly, their intentions are ill. So, in a way, it's almost like, it kind of goes into you can't choose your parents, right? You can't choose your environment. Whereas it started out the same, but like somewhere in the middle, they got different adoptive parents, and it guided them towards totally different paths. And in the end, that one the path that Arslan went when his life got torn asunder was a more positive character arc, and the path that Hilmes is going, not all the way yet, but like, I mean, it's clearly a more negative character arc, but his story isn't over. We will see what happens. Who knows? Maybe Arslan switches it up too. You know, who knows? I seriously doubt that. But Hilmes, I'm a bit more hopeful for. But we'll have to see what they do with the rest of the story. So yeah, hopefully they add more to the anime. Like from, because I believe there's more of the light novels. I wanted to read them. I couldn't find them in English. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully one of these days they put it in English. But beyond that, yeah, I like the character. Great character. Very complex. Very interesting guy. Probably one of the better written characters. I wouldn't say like all time great, but a definite gem. A surprisingly good character that on some random anime. So yeah. All right, that's it, y'all. Peace.